Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We will call this meeting to order. Can I get a motion, please, the agenda for the August 15th, 2023 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented? Go ahead, Councillor Chenard.
I'll move the adoption of the agenda.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Chenard. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. Can I get a motion, please, that the minutes of the July 18th, 2023 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented? Go ahead, Councillor Moore.
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. We have no public hearings. We do have a delegation tonight. Ian Qantas and Jeff McKay with Weyerhaeuser are here this evening. So come on up, gentlemen. Great to see you guys again. And they are going to be presenting on a project that they hope to see complete within the town of Edson and Wilmore Park. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. I'm Ian Qantas with Weyerhaeuser here in Edson.
Jeff McKay, also with Weyerhaeuser.
Yeah, so we have a proposal to put forward today, a joint effort between Weyerhaeuser and the Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta. We got a few slides here to click through. Got the introduction. So just talking about the objectives and deliverables, some of the adjustments we made for the fire, which you're all aware of, and then some of the next steps that we'd be seeing through 2023, 2024. Just a little bit of background on FREA. I'll use that acronym, but that's a funding mechanism through the royalties that we pay through the timber dues here in Alberta, and so there is some objectives that we have to meet with these proposals. So as you can see there, enhance the forest resources of Alberta, serve the interest of all Albertans as opposed to specific Albertans, and these aren't regularly required forest management functions. So for this project, we saw opportunity to bring some trail network to Edson and area, where we can meet the objectives of FREA and also get the public out in the forest, the opportunity to learn some things about forest ecology and forest management is good for us as a company. It helps explain what we're doing as an industry, as a sector, and also provide some enjoyment for those individuals who care to be out on the trails. It also builds on the exposure that the trail network has already. So we saw this was a big opportunity for us. So the project that as we earlier discussed with Christina and Bob here was largely focused on the Wilmore area. So we have just over 6 kilometers of trail, multi-use trail that we are proposing to develop in addition to the trail network that's down there already. And part of the how to expand the knowledge base for the community members that happen to be there is the installation of some interpretive trails. If you've been in Hornbeck, the trail system, there's a similar sort of thing where there's things to learn about the forest, and we can strategically place those so that it increases the opportunity to learn some of those forest ecosystem dynamics and along the way. So here's a draft of the proposal of the map, I should say. So in green, blue, and black are the existing trails, and then the proposed trail expansions are in white there. So you can see there is additional networking between existing trails, and so not they'd still need to be ground truth, but these with some consideration on overall park alignment and design were incorporated into these. So just here's the update for the fire. So the red, I just use the same color scheme for the actual trails, but the red is the fire guard, which I know everybody here has been aware of, and so we adjusted for timing with the evacuations, of course, and decided to push the actual construction of the timelines of the proposal into 2024. We are working actively with Wildfire, so we can use some of the existing fire guard as trail alignments. So to kind of incorporate that into the reclamation plan where appropriate. So we will have to amend some of the locations alongside that same process there. So part of the initial discussion that we had with Guy and Bob and Christine was around the master trail plan that Edson has. So we reviewed that and we're looking for opportunities to nest some of the interests for the town into the proposal. So this was the one of the alignments on the master trail plan from, I believe, 2017. So it is following the route for the sidewalk. So between the hospital there and Vision Park. So we saw this as an opportunity where we can provide some of the funding as part of the overall proposal and meet some of the objectives of the overall trail plan as well. So as far as the responsibilities, so the Wilmore trails, they are line item out with the budget. So we're proposing $290,000 from FRIA, so FRIA funding the new trail developments in Wilmore, and that would be Weyerhaeuser providing supervision for the contracts and also lining up those contracts. Similar process underway in Drayton Valley right now, and that we've initiated some discussions with that contractor, and it looks promising. So that the product is well managed and looks like a great improvement to the Eagle Point Park there. So the town trail portion also covered underneath the funding model, and where Weyerhaeuser was likely not the right fit to supervise that portion of the trail. We did work out the budget based on the numbers from Town of Edson here. So if we could kind of include that Town of Edson for supervising that and kind of aligning the contracts, I think that would be a good fit. The signage, so that was 18,000 for our estimate there, and so we would be happy to take care of that supervision and doing the wording and that sort of thing. So timelines as adjusted. So the proposal is complete, ready for submission, pending today's presentation here. So approval generally is within a month to 6 weeks, and then this fall when the leaves come off the shrubs, it's a good time to get some of that design work done, and we'd like to sign up that contractor if possible also this fall, as their summertime work schedule gets quite busy there. So trail construction summer 24 and spread that out into 2025, and then signage would kind of be on the tail end towards the wrap up there. So just a few take-home messages. Weyerhaeuser's been in the community for a long time. You'll be seeing shortly an invite for the 40th, or maybe you have already, for the 40th anniversary of Edson OSB. So we are excited to do projects like this and to be part of the community. I should have mentioned this off the top. I also am part of Edson Cycling Association, but not wearing that hat today, just Weyerhaeuser. Anyway, so encouraging outdoor activities and that knowledge of forest ecology and forest management is important, and it, like you say, there is a business value in folks having an understanding of what's going on in the forest there. So. And the other thing too is, and we've seen this already in underneath that Drayton Valley proposal, was the opportunity coming out of this to build other projects on top. So that forest education, grade 6 has the forest ecology section, and right now they're going elsewhere. And our idea was that we could give similar opportunities within our own area, as good as it gets as far as seeing some of the forest and some of the values out there. So I want to close off on this one. I heard some comment earlier about the trails coming back together again. So the forest, fire is a natural part of our forest, and it's when it gets this close to home, it's a little harder to see the value, but it is part of the ecosystem here, and it results in some work there as well, but it doesn't take long to get things back in shape. And as the young forest starts growing, we also get our boardwalks up and running again. And so just a testament to the kind of the ongoing role for the bike club and Weyerhaeuser in the community there. So that's all I had.
All right. Well, thank you, Ian. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff, you had the easy job tonight, eh?
Support role. Yeah.
All right, Council. Thank you very much for your presentation and all the work that passing on through the bike club that they've done in the trails since the fires. I know there's been a lot of work bees going on over the last number of months, and I know Weyerhaeuser's been involved as well. So thank you very much. Council, do you have any questions for either Jeff or Ian? Go ahead, Councillor Moore.
Yes, through the chair. Ian, those new trails through Wilmore, the new trail, would you consider that intermediate or a little tougher than that? Or
Yeah, I think there'll be a range, but I'd say green to blue, so easy to intermediate would be kind of so some of that's just the terrain that's out there, and but with that's been the when we keep track of the use of the trails, that's where we see those ones are getting the most use. So we're trying to build it to the preferences of the community there. So yeah.
Go ahead, CO Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, and to council, I just wanted to mention when Jeff and Ian came, along with Natalie actually, and their other partner, I can't remember, she was on screen, Wendy. Thank you. It was quite some time ago, and we were very excited to meet with them with regards to this project. Administration did provide a letter of support for their grant application, just given timing, etc., and also just the alignment with the Trails Master Plan as well. So we saw that it's a great opportunity for partnership with the town of Edson and Weyerhaeuser. But just wanted to mention that we have already issued the letter of support on this to support the application.
Thank you, CO Beveridge. Go ahead, Councillor Chenard.
Okay, I'm live. Thank you for the presentation. I'm aware that Weyerhaeuser does play an important part in our community. My question is, like the FIA funding, is that total cost or will be a shortfall? So this 291, that'll complete the 6.2, or is there more funding as well needed?
No, that is the total. Yeah.
So all these numbers that we total, so that's a great job by, like, I understand FIA, I guess it is, but I mean, I'm pleased that Weyerhaeuser's putting the money back in. So just thank you for that, and I do appreciate the extended trails. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to the presenters, gentlemen, thank you so much for your work and the presentation. CO Beveridge kind of beat me to it, as it sounded like super supportive, getting a letter of support. That's pretty easy from us. Me personally, I love it when businesses and organizations sort of take the initiative to improve our community and to improve an already great trail system that we have and what's going on at Wilmore Park. So I'm always in favor of groups wanting to do that. Many groups sort of come to us all the time and say, why don't you guys do that? But I love it when businesses, longtime businesses especially, and community groups step forward and want to do it themselves. So very supportive of the project, and the best of luck in the next little while. Thanks.
Go ahead, Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair, I do support this. I'm glad that the going through 6th Avenue there, back in 2003, it was asked to put a trail to Vision Park in 2003. So I see 20 years from now, we're going to do it, which is great. And I know bylaw asked for it, plus Parks had asked for it because it was a safety issue of equipment running down 748 or back on Highway 16. And back then when the ball tournaments were running really great, there's a lot of people walk back there and they end up taking Aspen Avenue there all the way down using the road or the sidewalks going through there in that day. And I think probably previous council, maybe I asked about it again. I brought it up and asked if we could actually look at it again. So I am fully supportive of this, and I know there's still a lot of people that do walk back there right now, and kind of through the tall grass and everything else, and so I think that is a great investment for our town. So, but I do support it. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. I think you heard we're very supportive of this, and just going out to Wilmore, it really is the hidden gem of our community, and we're seeing more and more people coming out from the city to enjoy our parks and our bike park and our trail system. So thank you, and thank you to Weyerhaeuser, and looking forward to 40-year celebration coming up this fall.
Thank you. I'll be in touch with how the proposal goes through.
All right, thank you. We have no reading of bylaws, reports from administration. We have the 2022-2023 season snow and ice control report, presented by Ryan O'Sullivan, Transportation and Fleet Services Manager. Do we want him to present first, CO Beveridge, and then do the motion? Or should we do the motion first? All right. I will take a motion that council approves snow and ice control policy OT3 as amended. Go ahead, Councillor Bevan.
We'll make it so.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bevan. Any questions? Oh, we're not voting yet. Never mind. We will do the vote after the presentation, and we'll hand things over to Mr. O'Sullivan.
Snow and ice report. This is kind of how we went through the last seasons of the first bylaw policy of what was it, the OT3. So our existing snow policy was adopted October 4th, 2022, last year. During this snow season event, so the fall and spring, we had two events which we've got over 10 centimeters threshold. Which triggered full clearing of all the roads in priority areas. And we did clear a third time due to ice pack and snow accumulation. So through the priority one, our level of service, which was part of our bylaw, it was 72 hours. We cleared it in 40. Priority twos, we have 120 hours. We cleared it in 110. Priority threes, we have 144 according to bylaws. We did it in 120. So our averaging was very below what we expected to be, which was very good. So other reporting costs for the 2022-23 season, we had $586,000 in equipment costs, $16,500 in overtime, sanding, and some snow clearing of parking lots. We had just about $65,000 for the snow dump for contracted services. We had just about $25,000 for the rented grader last year because of the engine failure, and that $840 for the parking lot clearings. So as the chart below is all the snow events we had last year, as it's showing there was 2 over 10 and a bunch, not quite getting to the 10. So the equipment and the resources we used for last year, we have now 2 graders, a loader with a bucket, 2 willies, One has a plow, one has a snow blower attached. We have 4 tandem trucks, one sanding truck, and we have a backup sander and a hoe available if needed. Our snow dump is operated by a contractor. We have 8 staff at this moment, working 8-hour shifts, 5 days a week. And we always have the option to borrow from the Parks Department or other departments if needed. And the option to hire contracted service if we get major snow events. So a couple observations, what didn't work well. Well, we had a grader down with a blown engine for most of last year, which caused us to rent a grader for most of the beginning of 2022, which put a little damper into it. We had our snow blower had a linkage problem, which in the first snowfall kind of slowed us down a little bit, a couple days to get that fixed. And tandems go down because of cold weather. When it hits minus 40, things are going to freeze up. So, and then of course the parking on the streets is always an issue. And we managed just to jump a street for the morning and then come back in the afternoon, which the cars were mostly gone because they saw us plowing in the areas. What worked well? We did clear P1s to P3 in the vent within 140 hours, 17 days with the residential zones, so well within our policy guidelines. We received the minimum of reporter problems and phone complaints. Most of the calls were wondering why we were not plowing their neighborhood when we were close doing, arterials or collectors, and we would be getting to them next. We did have lots of comments come in through social media and positive phone calls to the Public Works, which was fantastic, which I shared with my group, and it was very uplifting. And that second grader was instrumental this year on helping us clear all of our priorities. It was fantastic. It was really, really well used. So one of the policy adjustments we'd like to add is 50th Street from 7th to 12th, moving it to our priority 3. It's just such a wide road. We'd like to clear it a little earlier than letting it get all packed in there with parked cars and people driving it so much. It acts more like a major collector than a local up there in a residential. So we'd like to add that a little quicker into our priority schedules. And we'd also, as far as the ice control policy, we would like to add a third section in it, clearing the packed snow and ice from roads using the method described in the snow control section of this policy. So it's just one more little action item that we can use to plow icy roads. We've removed the section 4 out of the snow policy, saying that transportation manager has the power to plow the roads at any time he wants. We didn't think that was really necessary. It was kind of highlighted in the policy change, but we didn't think we needed it. I think the policy is good enough the way it's read. So administration recommends that council approves the proposed amendments of the snow policy OT3. And if there's any questions.
All right, thank you, Ryan, for your presentation here this evening, and I concur the phone calls on snow clearing were much less last season than I have experienced in the past, except for the little issue that we had around the holidays there, but we got that all sorted out. So, council, any questions, comments, or concerns? We will go to Councillor Moore.
Through the chair to Mr. O'Sullivan. I'm not quite head up on equipment names, but what's a willy?
Okay. Through the chair to Councillor Moore, it's a type of machinery. It's smaller than a front end loader, so we use them to move to clean driveways, to clean intersections, kind of moving snow around. They're just a smaller piece of machinery we have.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor, thank you for the presentation. I sort of go back to when I first came on council. It was 2021, 2022. That year was a really tough year for snow removal, and then our administration proposed a lot of different changes to the snow removal policy, which were implemented this past year. And the positive feedback that we got shows that the changes that were made were excellent and are working really well. I think we can agree that we maybe had a different sort of type of snowfall events than the previous years, but with climate change, you're going to see that. And one of the things that that we had said from the get-go is we want adaptability, right? And you're able to adapt, and these ideas you're bringing forward here today show that adaptability. The initiative it took last year when we saw the snowpack happening, and we hadn't seen an event, but the snowpack was becoming problematic, to say, okay, we better build that into the policy. So I'm supportive of the two changes today, and thank you for bringing this forward in August.
Problems this year.
Thank you, and we will go to Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair, I get a lot of people still asking me, what are our priority routes? They don't have any, some of them don't have any way of seeing what they are. They don't have a computer, they don't know how to get on it, they don't know where to go through the town or whatever and that. Is there any other way we can send something out now that we're doing this here? You know, I don't know, because I explain to them when I pull it up on my iPhone or whatever, and so, well, this is what our priority routes are. And then they understand it, but they've never seen it, some of them. And that, so I still get that question lots, okay, you're doing priority 3 here, what does that mean? So when I show them that, now we're doing right to the top here, they're happy about that. But there's still a lot of people out there just don't know where it is and what they are. And I don't know how we can include them all.
Councillor Bevan. I think if we print off a couple more maps, and that way you can have them just come to town center, and they can view the maps, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they can see exactly what streets, what avenues are attached to each of the priorities.
All right, thank you. Councillor Chenard.
Yes, I do like the changes. I do compliment. The one question I have, because it worked great last year, when's our snow blower coming? Because when the new grader arrived, it stopped snowing. So is the snow blower coming in January so it can halt the snow?
Through the chair to Councillor Chenard. We are hoping to getting a new snow blower in 2024, but our other one is still well in its service life, and we don't see an issue with it for the next snowfalls or for this year. And once we do have our new snowblower, hopefully for January, we will be using that as a backup. So we won't be without a backup.
I throw it in, but I do have to concur with.
Thank you, Councillor Chenard. Your mic's not on anymore.
Will you shut me off?
Yes, Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor, actually, just regards to Councillor Bevan's comments, residents can also check the newspaper as well. I know our communications team is putting that out there as well. It's just another idea. But the maps is great too, but that information should be in the newspaper for those people that don't have access to internet and those types of things.
Thank you. So a question that I noticed last year as we were dealing with snow removal, and it's something that we deal with every snow season, and you mentioned in your report, Mr. O'Sullivan, is people parking on the streets when snow removal clearing is underway. And I think we're still a little challenged with some signage issues every once in a while and getting the word out. I do know in my neighborhood, the sign was up for 2 days and they came after day 2 and people still didn't move their vehicles. And then when I look at the policy, we have removed any ability to tag and tow. So I was wondering if there was a philosophy behind that, or have we discussed ideas on how we can maybe, some communities do snow bans in certain neighborhoods until that snow clearing is complete. One of the ideas when we went through these arterial roads in the neighborhoods is to give people a place to park their vehicles. So they can move off street and park a block away while that snow clearing is occurring, because some people don't have alley parking and that sort of thing. Has there been any discussion on that, or is there a reason why we don't at least have that ability under the bylaw to tag and tow anymore?
To the chair. No, I honestly, I didn't find the parking a big issue this year. It seemed like when we were going to plow the road and there's lots of cars on it, we moved to a separate road. By the time they were finished, that one came back, the cars were gone. So they knew we were in the area. They were willing to get off the road and make it clear. We did have the odd car that stuck there through months because they just kept piling up. Maybe we'll see how this season goes, and maybe we'll do a revision to the policy in 2024 to see if we need to add that.
Okay, that sounds good to me, and I'm supportive of these changes. I'm really glad you added 50th Street on the north end. That's been something that we've talked about for a couple snow seasons now, and just the amount of traffic that comes on that roadway, and as you mentioned, that snowpack packs up, and then you got ruts all over the place. and then it's fun trying to cross from one side to the other. So look forward to seeing these changes in place, and I'm glad to see that the new equipment's also helping out. Mr. Kittlich, you have something you want to add?
While I'm out of practice. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So just a clarification on that. So the red line version of the policy under snow control, there was point number 4 added in as a red line. That was never part of the original policy. It was the first red line that we had done, and then we realized that it's kind of redundant because that discretion is already provided to the transportation manager on page 3 of the policy. So it's showing up as a red line as an amendment, but really it's not there. It doesn't exist today. That we don't want to add it as a clause, just to be clear, so that just so council understands what that is. So my fault. I missed removing it after we changed it, so it was my fault.
Okay, sounds good. And that's already covered in another section on page 3? Okay. All right. Any other further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I will call the question. Please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. O'Sullivan. Moving on, we have sanitary sewer condition assessment presented by Mr. Clayton Kittlich, GM of Infrastructure and Planning. Can I get a motion, please? The council accept the sanitary sewer condition assessment final report and capital plan as information. And we're going to go over to Councillor Chenard.
I'll make the motion.
All right, thank you. And I believe we also have our consultants here, so I'll hand things over to Mr. Kittlich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Yes, so we're happy to present this this body of work that was approved in the 2022 capital budget to complete a sanitary sewer condition assessment. That also includes some maintenance suggestions as well as a capital plan for some of the improvements to that system. So McElhaney was a successful consultant to do this work for us. Been working on it quite extensively for over a year now. And they're here to present their findings. Jeff Edmondson and Michael Maltese are here to present and hopefully answer any questions the council has regarding this report. So I'll turn it over.
Okay. Ready to go? Pardon? Start slideshow. Started where, sorry? All right. Problem unsolved. So I'm Jeff Amundsen. I'm with McElhaney. We're a consulting firm that operates all over Western Canada, but we have a local surveying office here in Edson. But me and Michael Maltese here practice municipal engineering out of the Edmonton branch. So I'm here today to discuss the Edson Sanitary Capital Plan, which I understand is pretty important to a lot of people here. Seen a lot of sanitary flooding with some of the large storms that have taken place. So we're here to discuss that and really what the town needs to do to get things working and prevent some of those problems moving forward. So, this is a quick description of kind of the topics we'll be discussing. The first is why was the work initiated, what got the project started, what work did we do. So we did pretty extensive computer modeling to kind of represent the town's sanitary sewer system. So we'll go into that a little bit. And then from that, there were a series of key findings related to inflow and infiltration, what upgrades are going to be necessary just to make sure that the town has capacity, and then a condition assessment. So we reviewed a large library of town CCTV video to determine which repairs are necessary. There were a few point repairs that were identified. Following that, we've identified capital costs, and within that, we've created a hierarchy of which is the most important project, kind of numerically there,
and associated costs. And within that is kind of programs that are needed to do further assessment, for repairs that are necessary and for upgrades that are necessary. And then after the capital cost section, we'll discuss next steps, where we'll basically make a roadmap of what needs to be done to make sure the sanitary system is operating the way you want it to. So moving on to the next slide here. Yeah, there were a couple reasons for the report. I mean, now that you've seen the flooding, I guess it's probably more obvious, but when the report was initiated, there were a couple key considerations. One is there is a known inflow and infiltration issue. So the town, ordinarily in a sanitary sewer system, you don't want to be getting a lot of stormwater or groundwater inflow into your system. It should be just sewage effluent that's coming into your system. But what happens is, over time, there's breakages, there's cracks, there's just a number of factors that cause additional water to come into the system. And so that was, I guess Edson has a lot of inflow and infiltration. And so that was known, and that was one of the things we were to look at in the report. An additional problem is when we're doing this modeling, there's something we do called calibration. And what it is you take real world data and you run your modeled results against the data, and that gives you confidence that what you're producing is accurate. And so what we discovered before we initiated this project was there was a calibration error from before, and we can't fault the previous engineer for it because it was hard for us just to discover, but it was just related to where the flow monitoring station was and kind of a buffering effect. It's a long story. So we wanted to do additional work to properly calibrate the model. And so, yeah, I'll get more into that after. We know that there are capacity concerns related to both the collection system and the wastewater treatment plant. So reducing inflow and infiltration and properly calibrating your model are both helpful steps in addressing that. And then lastly, there's a need for a capital plan. With some issues, there's going to be a need to prioritize projects and for the council to know the costs and to plan accordingly. So we'll be discussing that kind of at the end here once we've gone through our results. Okay, so what was done? What did we do? We did, I guess to complete the report, we did a flow monitoring program, which, as mentioned, was to properly calibrate the model. And then we produced a calibrated model. And then following that, we analyzed your system to see, what upgrades needed to be done to make sure everything was running properly. Following that, we also did a kind of an audit of the town's CCTV video library, where there had been a bunch of inspection of a lot of the town sanitary pipe, but it hadn't been compiled and analyzed for what needed to be done. So we incorporated that into the report. And then finally, there was a capital plan where we identified priority upgrades in order of necessity, and that also included kind of the high priority repairs and maintenance, and then associated costs to complete that work. Okay, so kind of getting into it. The first step here is I don't know if, depending on who you are, this will be the most or least interesting part of the report, but so this is a quick summary of the modeling work that we did. And there's kind of two parts to the modeling. There's the dry weather and then the wet weather. So for the dry weather, what you do is you take a segment of data where you just have ongoing flow monitoring, and you look at some of you compute your patterns for, on a day-by-day basis. Usually you have less at night and quite a bit more in kind of the evening. And then this gives you a lot of confidence that, I guess, what your model's spitting out is accurate. You can see the smooth line is the model line there, and then the jagged line is your real world data, and you can see it roughly follows it, which gives you confidence that your model's doing what it should. It's not computing bad results. And so, yeah, this is just an example. We have a number of these flow monitoring stations across town to gather this data. We did the flow monitoring over an extended period, and we're quite glad we did, because the upgrades that are recommended as a result of this work are pretty extensive, and you don't want to be wasting your money. And so, and I will say this year you had very good data, lots of rainfall. And so, yeah, we had, I know, I felt bad because like I love the data, but I knew it's not good for the town. But yeah, you really benefited the report. So after we had the dry weather flow or the dry weather calibration complete, really the critical part is the wet weather calibration. So if you look at so this is one of the monitoring stations, and what you can see is you have kind of dry weather flow leading up to the wet weather, and then there's a massive spike, and we would characterize that as severe. That is a severe inflow and infiltration problem. Like I had a hard time actually modeling it properly because it spiked so fast. And yeah, this is quite unusual. So what you do is you play around with a couple factors, and then you get your model to basically represent properly what happens in one of these storms. And so that's kind of what this shows is eventually we get the model to a point where it's accurately reflecting the storm the storm inflow and infiltration. So I don't know, that all this really shows is like, yes, our model's accurate. And so this is kind of the outcome of the model. So this figure isn't the storm. What this figure is a design storm. What we do when we design sanitary upgrades is we look at we produce a design curve, I guess, or a design storm rather. And in this case, it's a fairly intense 25-year storm to produce this. And so what this shows is surcharging across the town under that design storm condition. And so you can, and what surcharging is under typical gravity flow, your pipe only flows so full. Your pipe is big enough, the flow goes through, it's no problem. But if your pipe isn't big enough, it starts getting backed up and creating pressure in the pipe. And so that's what surcharging is, and so that's what you're seeing there is under a 25-year storm, what kind of surcharging takes place. And so you can see...
That's the red highlighted lines, right?
Yeah, the red highlighted lines, yeah.
So everyone knows
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
lines
Red
we're
is
looking at.
Red is bad, yeah.
Green's good, red's bad.
So the red doesn't mean flooding, the red means surcharging, but what the surcharging means is higher risk. So that can lead to sanitary backup. So anywhere there's red, you have a higher risk of sanitary backup, which based on the sanitary flooding reports that the town got this year, I think it's lining up fairly well with what we're showing. So the next page is probably more pertinent to engineers. So we have something called a hydraulic grade line, and basically it just indicates how much pressure the pipe is under. And so if the hydraulic grade line is kind of above the pipe and within 2.2 meters, it's higher risk of getting flooding into your basement. And so wherever you see kind of the red dots, there's a higher risk. And so if you see a high density of red dots, that's a bad sign for the people in that area. And so if you can fix your sanitary collection system, you'll be lowering your hydraulic grade line and hopefully fixing your problems. Yeah. Okay, so we ran this analysis, and then we had a series of key findings kind of summarized here related to inflow and infiltration, future upgrades, and then the condition assessment and repair schedule. So getting into the first one, inflow and infiltration. So I kind of gave a quick summary before of what inflow and infiltration is, cracks in your pipe, surface infiltration. But another major culprit is some systems that discharge directly into the pipe. Anything that ties in directly into the pipe will help to create that rapid peak for your inflow and infiltration. And so, especially the north residential area has a lot of direct connections, and when I was modeling it, that was the results showed that that's exactly what happened. There was a large peak attributed to that. So another one of the more interesting findings to come out of the modeling, though, is that the southwest commercial area, we were able to isolate that area and determine there was a huge amount of groundwater infiltration coming from that specific region. And so 17.5% of the total volume of sanitary inflow is from, well, we think, groundwater in this area. So if you can take that out, if you can somehow prevent that, fix it or whatever, you'll end up with a lot more capacity in your wastewater treatment plant. So that's great from a capital cost perspective. You can delay future upgrades to your wastewater treatment plant.
And downstream piping as well.
Yeah,
Th-
and
This is,
downstream
this
piping.
is a real big number as far as II goes.
Mm-hmm.
And a quick win, right? I mean, if you can figure out what's causing that much infiltration, which could be, you know, a storm sewer pipe that got connected into sanitary. So all of a sudden, all your stormwater is accidentally going into sanitary because somebody did a repair or, you know, a business, you know, did some development and connected to the wrong pipe. If you find what that is, you can bring down a bunch of your downstream issues with a fairly limited cost. But it could be the entire pipe's cracked and flooding and in a swamp too. So a little investigation is required, and it could go either way, but that number is significantly higher than what you want it to be. You know, we're used to seeing it in the 5 to 8% range. 17.5 is big. So there could be an easy win there, is what we're saying.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it'll help some of your system, but the major trunks going north-south are probably not going to be dramatically impacted by it, but it's especially good for your wastewater treatment plant capacity. The northwest residential area there as well, yeah, we're seeing about 5% of the sanitary inflow come from there. So that's another, well, hopefully we can figure out what's going on there and fix that as well. So that was, yeah, those are a couple of the key findings of the report. And if you want more information, we do have kind of detailed analysis in the report, but this is a pretty good summary for now. Okay, so this is probably the most interesting part to most people here. We've identified a series of upgrades that are kind of necessary to prevent surcharging in your pipe system. And all of them are, according to the model, fairly high priority, but kind of the two that the town is focused on at the moment are A1 and A2. Unfortunately, it's a little hard to see, but it's the 10th Avenue sanitary main and the 54th/56th Street sanitary trunk. There was quite a bit of sanitary backup reported, I think, related to these pipes. So yeah, the town's actively looking at these and kind of designing upgrades to hopefully make that issue go away. In addition to that, there's some other trunks that the model was showing as kind of way over capacity. A3 and A4, which again, hard to see, but 52nd Street and 50th Street trunk, and then First Avenue as well. All those trunks are kind of leading into one pipe along First Avenue. So that pipe isn't terribly surcharged, but it still will need upgrading, and will need to be upgraded kind of at the same time, because once you start fixing the upstream pipes, it puts more pressure on the downstream pipes. The last one that we'll probably hold off, that I would recommend holding off on for a while, is the 48th Street sanitary main. I don't have a lot of confidence in the model results on that one. Like, we used the calibration results for the area, but it was showing a lot more, it was showing worse pipe performance than I would expect, like even at the high end of the pipe. So in the report, I recommended some additional flow monitoring to verify what's going on there. I think that would be pertinent, considering, it's a lot more money to figure out, is our pipe really that bad, or instead of just ripping it out and going full steam ahead. So that's kind of the upgrades for now. We'll discuss, we'll have capital costs coming up at the end of the report to show kind of a high level cost, what we think it'll be. And then, for the condition assessment part of the report, I'm just handing it off to Mike here.
It's good to give me something to talk about. Yes. So, as Jeff mentioned at the beginning there, right when we kicked off the job, part of the scope was to do a condition assessment of the project. Previous administration and Public Works fortunately had the foresight of keeping all their videos and logging it fairly well. So in initial discussions, I mean, we originally discussed bringing in a crew to do some inspections, but they said they had all this data. And I said, well, we don't, old data is still data. So what we did instead is we actually analyzed it ourselves and went through all the old data, which is really good data because Public Works was probably looking at those locations because they had an issue. So it's already bringing in data there where we know there's some issues likely in the field because they've already looked at it. So we went through and we reviewed all that camera work, which was about a third of the town. So we got a lot of information out of it for significantly less cost, which was great for the town. So what we do is there's an organization called NASCO. They have a certain coding system. It's sort of worldwide. Everybody follows the same system. You go through and you watch the videos and you identify issues and cracks. There's 5 levels of grade that they provide. So level 5 is a significant crack that's going to cause a failure or is causing a failure and needs to be repaired quickly and immediately usually. But depends on where it is too. Like the one on the screen now is a level 5 crack, but it's at the bottom of the pipe. So you're not going to get an immediate collapse out of that kind of level 5 crack. If that crack was on the top of the pipe, you would have soil infiltration and whatnot into the pipe, and you could get a sinkhole somewhere in the street eventually. The soils in Edson are quite stiff clays, so it would take some time to propagate up to the surface. But still, when we find stuff like this is stuff that you want to fix fairly quickly. The picture above is more of a hinge crack kind of situation. There's multiple fractures. Those kind of things are usually caused by loading issues above. So something that heavy has loaded that pipe potentially and caused cracking in it, and it will eventually cave in and fail. So something like that would need to be fixed fairly quickly too. So of the data we've gone through, you want to go to the next slide. We've kind of reviewed them all. There's, like I said, we only have about a third of the town. We identified 27 level 5 cracks or failures or something like that, which isn't actually that bad. I mean, each one of those is, I mean, typically you get like the town crew to fix it when they're doing some other work. Or if you're doing a paving job, you could throw it into that contract and, one spot repair for that particular contract or something. So we have a list, we have a map shared with the town so that they can identify that as they're doing work. There's another picture up there where a pipe is basically settled half the width of the pipe. So you have a significant flow restriction in that pipe. So on some of the modeling stuff that Jeff's doing, none of this is really triggered into that computer model. It assumes the pipes are full and operating properly. But if you run into something like this, into a pipe that's already has capacity issues, then you're really going to see some surcharging in the pipe and whatnot. So you sort of cross-reference these defects with the capacity things and identify whether like a sag or a drop isn't really an issue if we're at the top of a street and half the pipe is gone, but there's only 3 houses above it. Well, it's still more pipe than what the house has, so it's not going to really be an issue. But if you have something like this in your major trunk sewer and all of town is coming into it, it's a significant issue and you're going to have all sorts of backing up behind it. So when you're looking at defect repairs and stuff, you have to look at where you are and manage your risk more so than manage the cracks and whatnot, because the whole town will have cracks all over the system. Every town in Alberta does. There's old VCT pipe, which is clay tile pipe. Lots of it's been cracked since the day they put it in. Back in the day, there was no camera work or anything on it. And people see this and they get quite upset and it's really bad. But if it's not moving, it's probably been like that for 20 years and it's not a capacity structural issue, but it could be an II issue. An II is a much harder issue to address than a structural issue because finding those sources are hard to find because you have to be cammering while there's water coming in and it's not always raining and nobody wants to work in the rain to discover where those cracks are, right? So II is a much bigger issue to solve, but some of these big structural cracks need to be repaired. So like I said, there was 27 grade 5 cracks or structural issues and 70 grade 4 that we had discovered. And some of those grade 4s are just sags in the pipe, so they may be nothing. You may not have to do anything as you further assess them. So that's what we did on CCTV. Part of our recommendation on the CCTV is that the town continues and looks at the other 2/3 of the town, so you have a full picture of what you're dealing with, because we've developed a capital costs to repair this stuff, but it's not a full picture. And it's good to continue to do that. And you'd like to get a whole picture and maybe every 5-10 years do it again to see if stuff changed. Lots of the time we recommend monitor and see what happens. Because below level 4, there's level 3, level 2, level 1. I mean, and you know, some pipes have 50 cracks in them. Some have it all centered around a manhole that's jacked or something. And it's an easy repair. So we took all this data that Jeff did on capacity. To note on the capacity stuff is it's all wet weather capacity issues. So it's only because you have an I&I issue that you have capacity issues. I&I is super hard to find, so you end up, it's easier to replace pipes and upside pipes while you look at your I&I issues because it's a multi-year effort, whereas a pipe replacement can happen in a couple of years. And in reality, significantly less cost than lining all your pipes or replacing all your cracked pipes. Unless you do some smoke testing and find some stormwater bad connections where you have that 20% issue, you can do, there's other ways we can look. We can do smoke testing, we can do dye testing. We start looking at what's going on in the pipe to try to identify, you know, what you might find out in the field. So anyways, we've compiled all this data into a cost, because really what councils need is to manage their budgets every year, and there's never enough money to do everything that council wants, and certainly fixing your infrastructure is a big piece of the pie. So some of the stuff that Jeff highlighted, that the high priority stuff, we identified about $9 million worth of sanitary sewer repairs required. So this is the stuff that's already seeing surcharging on the pipes. And it also is an issue with expanding and development, right? So if you already have pipes that are full, you can't really expand more on them until you address some of the capacity issues. So as a town looking to get a bigger tax revenue and whatnot, and you know, grow subdivisions, you have to address these trunk sewers that are getting full and need to expand. And you know, unfortunately, we did look at some of the long-term growth plans for the town, and none of those were really causing the trigger. It was already triggered. We're already in a situation from the I&I flows that we need to look at this further. Also to note, I think, is we modeled this on a 25-year event. That big storm you got this summer was actually a 50-year event. So we aren't even looking at that. We typically look at a smaller event.
Yeah, you look at a 25-year, but I will say, just for your own confidence, like the 25-year storm we look at has like a very high peak. So you have different types of storms, right? You have very long-term, large, you know, high rainfall storms, and then you have your shorter, you know, just massive dumps of water. And the shorter high-intensity ones is what will usually lead to your largest inflow and infiltration problems. Because if it's really slow, you theoretically should be getting a lot slower inflow, and then it won't be taking up as much of your pipe capacity while it's going through your system. So, I mean, the 25-year storm we used is, I think that's very appropriate for your system. There's one other note on here. So we did flag one other item more as a development item, and kind of just italicized it. But I know that the town is considering development to the southwest. And so to the southwest, the sanitary system starts to get pretty shallow. And so when that starts happening, you need to start looking at a lift station. So what you can do is install a lift station and then install a force main kind of going farther in your system, and then you could have development kind of going to that lift station. And then if that lift stations being put there for new development, you can put that cost onto the developers rather than the town. But that would be triggered by kind of development needs, not by capacity concerns. Yeah.
Next steps, you want to do next steps, or?
Yeah, so this is kind of the roadmap of all the things that the town needs to do to kind of fully address the problems in their sanitary sewer system. And we kind of touched on most of them here. CCTV assessment program to get a full picture of what's going on, whether there's any failures in the pipe and that are unknown. That can lead to sanitary backup at a very inconvenient time.
Just on that before we move on, typically what we recommend at this point to do is the trunk sewers, the high importance sewers, which failures cause significant issues for the entire town. Unfortunately, when you're doing these high volume sewers, CCTV them is also much more difficult and much more costly. But it's important to spend that money in some of these trunk sewers so you know that there isn't any sediment buildup or backup. You know the pipe is in good shape, because if it isn't and it fails, you could flood every person in town or have a significant environmental spill, right? So, which isn't something you want either, because there's significant cost towards that as well. So because not a lot of the trunk sewer work was done in the CCTV, because there probably hadn't been any problems, which is a good sign, but at the same time, that's probably where the focus would be going forward on CCTV work.
So we've already discussed inflow and infiltration, but yeah, investigating and correcting that high groundwater infiltration, especially in that southwest, that's probably task number one. And then eliminating the direct connection. So that's probably a difficult program to implement, but pretty important. And so developing a program to start eliminating those direct connections is the next step. And exactly what that looks like, I guess, is hard to say at this point.
Yeah. So what he's talking about there is, so your easy ones to fix are storm system tied into sanitary. Pretty easy fix. Maybe sanitary manholes sitting in sags in the row and water's coming in through the frame and cover. But some of these harder ones are your sump pump connections, because people don't want their sump pumps to go to their lawn. Some houses might have storm leader connections into their sanitary sewer too, which happened in the past. And it's sort of an education system that has to go to the town, and some towns do some funding to support moving their sump pumps outside and giving them a little grant or something to get it out of the pipe. But then often they get annoyed that their lawn's wet all the time, and I bet you it would be in a place like Edson where the groundwater is really high, right? So there's some frustrations that you get from that kind of connection, and that's the stuff that's just really hard for anybody to deal with, because first of all, you don't have control over it because it's on private property. So you do have control over it in your bylaws and your new developments, and you can force that to not happen. But in your old stuff that's already going that way, it's a challenge. So, that's why II is hard to deal with, and sometimes you just upsides the pipe because it's quicker and a bit easier to manage.
Mm-hmm. So, and then next step, or another next step, is develop a sewer flushing program. So there are a couple areas of the town with flat pipe. And so when we design sanitary pipe, we make sure that it's designed at a certain slope so that it carries all the debris with it. If you have too flat of a pipe, you start getting debris deposited on the pipe. And so there's a couple flat sections in Edson. And so you want to be making sure that that's regularly cleaned out so that you don't contribute to some sort of plug over time. So in the report, we identified a few areas that probably need regular sewer flushing just because of the flat grades. And then lastly, the system upgrades, which we talked about in the previous section, capacity related upgrades and the condition, the repairs and whatnot. And yeah, that's kind of it for the presentation. I guess at this point we'll be looking for questions.
Well, thank you for bringing us lots of great news today. Appreciate it. the joys of having a community that's 110 years old. With lots of old pipes. Council, open the floor to questions. There's lots to take in and consider in the report. Go ahead, Councillor Moore.
Through the chair, to whoever can answer this for me, how do we compare with, in this regard, with towns basically our size?
Yeah, I did another town recently. Yeah, there's high groundwater inflow and infiltration, and I mean, a lot of towns see it because, you know, in Alberta, you know, it's just aging infrastructure, right? Like over time, your infrastructure just breaks down. You start getting higher groundwater inflow and infiltration, but anywhere with a high groundwater table, you know, it just really exacerbates the issue. So yeah, Edson is unfortunately kind of bad example of it.
On the condition assessment stuff, though, you're like every other community in the province. Anybody this old has the same old BCT pipes, the same cracks, the same deficiencies. It's infrastructure gets old. The whole province, the whole country, and the whole world has an infrastructure deficit that we're all trying to fix, and it's just costly and expensive.
All right, thank you. $30 billion infrastructure deficit in Alberta. Number that we like to share all the time. Go ahead, Councillor Chenard.
Thanks for you guys' presentation. My question is this 8.8 million, so 9 million, what do you recommend the time that we replace this in? Because we do understand, like you're on your report, we estimated like your 10th Avenue, 52nd Street, and we all have price tags now. It's hard to put a priority, but we're looking at 8, so probably $9 million. But what kind of a time frame do you think we should repair this on? And if we don't repair it, it's going to cause other problems later.
So there's, I mean, the two we're working on now, there was a lot of flooding issues on it. So the timeline for that one is to continue working on it and fix it because you want to, it's going to hit several houses that we see flooding and identified upstream of that, more houses are flooding. So reality, that's what you're trying to eliminate. First step is known problems, right? So you have houses that flood, and we have a model that supports, because there's other reasons we cause houses to flood, right? It's not just capacities issues, especially in storm events. And it gets pretty hard to tell what storm and what sanitary is sometimes in a storm event and whatnot. But there is certainly an area where we have identified that it's a capacity issue and that's what's causing the problem. So yes, you want to fix those or it's going to cost the town and other reasons. As you get further down into some of the surcharging issues, so that pipe's at capacity. It's not going to have any more capacity unless you miraculously find some II issues that you can drop the flows into the pipe. So they are limiting your ability to expand. They may be surcharging, but they may not be causing significant, backups because of where they are. They're trunk sewers or not. Like a trunk sewer are quite deep. They could surcharge 4 or 5 meters and not cause any problems at all. But you still are out of capacity, right? So you're adding a new development onto that trunk sewer. You shouldn't until you've developed some new capacity into it.
Yeah. So it's also it's a matter of risk because Edson's seen 2 huge storms last year and this year, and so. If you get another similar enormous storm next year, you're probably going to be looking at similar risk, right? So you probably shouldn't be getting a 1 in 25 year or 1 in 50 year storm every year, but it's still statistically possible. And it's really a matter of managing your risk. So it's a hard question to answer because if you did experience a similar storm, you'd get the same results next year, right?
Yeah. Another example, I guess, on timing is we have $1.5 million in defects or something, right? So that stuff that your regular town operations could get to, when they're having a slow week or they pick one off every couple of weeks and just put it into their plan and they just go away kind of slowly. They don't fail catastrophically that often. I mean, they can, and I've seen it happen, and it's not good. But you want to address those as quick as you can as well. And then the other stuff, so basically we have 8 million, 9 million, say in the next 5 years is what we're saying. I mean, you're actively working to fix those first 8, 9 million. The 10-year stuff is partly related to expansion. As you mentioned, there's one very long pipe that doesn't quite make sense, and we just like to look at it some other way because the numbers aren't adding up from what we expect to see. I mean, the model's saying that, but just, our engineering experience says, well, it shouldn't be doing this, so what's causing it? So that one might fall off the list as we start looking on it, and you may drop it down, another million or something. I mean, we did one of these for another community, and it turned out much better for them because we removed 4 million from their list after calibrating. So it just depends on some of your II issues, but certainly in the next 5 years, you're looking at trying to fix, $8-9 million, and there is some funding out there that happens for this kind of work. The province and funding agencies, when you start identifying trunk sewers as an issue, they also know that's high risk, and they tend to look more positively on funding high risk jobs.
All right, thank you very much for that, and we will move on now to Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor, gentlemen, thank you for the presentation. I'm just going to give some of my comments, and then I'll have just a couple of questions at the end. Just as Mayor Zahara said, that this is great news, by the way. This is but news that we need to hear, right? And we are entering our budget deliberations in the next little bit, and to administration, we have to take this report with us as well, because this has to be built into our capital plan and operational plans as we move forward. We know we have these issues, and this report clearly identifies where some of these issues are, and some, as you say, maybe easier fixes that we might have, but we need to address them probably sooner rather than later. So just a couple of questions, both to Mr. Kitlitz. The first question is, in terms of tying in direct connections, what do our land use bylaws say regarding that, or does it say anything at all?
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, so the land use bylaw doesn't address that specifically, and neither do our existing, I think it's, that's wastewater bylaw and the utilities bylaw. One of the things that's on our list this year is to do a brand new utility bylaw that would specifically address that. But I do understand that there was a point in time, and I don't know whether it's written in a bylaw or just a practicing, that was stopped. Okay. We just heard this morning, actually, I can't remember the time, but Hillendale, for example, doesn't have direct connection, it's sunk. Okay. So that has stopped. The practice has stopped in the town for sure. It's not written in stone, it's just a practice that we've stopped. So, okay. But we're working on getting that into bylaw.
All right, thank you. And the second question, again to Mr. Kitlitz, in terms of the map that they showed, in terms of, and it's just in the presentation regarding areas that sort of have a higher chance of either flooding or sewer backup, do we see a connection between that and some of the issues we saw back in June of the areas that saw flooding and stuff like that? If you laid the map one over the other, are we seeing like a mirror image here or same image here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I think the gentleman kind of spoke to that. If you looked at the dot map that we have of the private properties that flooded, they're kind of in that middle part of town, right down the middle belt. Eh?
Yeah, if I can jump
yeah,
in.
Absolutely, yeah.
There was correlation. Like there were areas where it didn't line up perfectly, which makes me think it's more related to some sort of localized issue. But yeah, especially on the it was 10th Ave and 54th and 56th, like that correlated very well. So I guess in answer to your question, some of it, yes, and then there were parts of it that didn't, which are probably more related to like an isolated problem at that location. Thank you.
Thank you. My question would be to Mr. Kitlitz, put you on the spot here. Just to refresh us, because we've dealt with a lot in the last few months, what's in our capital plan for this year and next year in terms of 10th Avenue and the project along 55th, 56th Street?
Yeah. So, Mr. Mayor, so if you recall, we asked for funding this year for the design of those two projects. So, and actually, Matt Gilhenney was also successful in that tender. So, right now, they're in progress of doing the design work for both the 10th Ave and the 54th, which were the top two on the list, if I'm not mistaken. So really, those will be brought back as completed design shovel-ready projects for council to consider as part of this year's capital budget. We'll bring obviously lots of other competing priorities, but they'll be on the list. I can assure you that.
All right, and then just a further question to our presenters this evening. We know that infiltration, as you pointed out, is a huge issue, and we also know that those older neighborhoods have a lot of sumps that are tied into our sanitary system, as well as Weeping Town and that sort of thing. Would it be beneficial, do you think, or have you seen much success in your experience with municipal programs? I know you kind of touched on that earlier, to try to get some of these properties off, disconnected from these systems, because at the end of the day, I think a wet lawn is a much better alternative than a flooded basement. And we know that some of our backflows did not work as intended, so there has to be something else that's going on in some of these areas.
Well, I mean, the results, yeah, I guess the best way is maybe just to reiterate, yeah, the results did show like a massive spike. So if you do take them offline, you're going to have a significant improvement to your system.
As far as success, yes, communities have had success. It's not an overnight success. It's a long-term educational success, right? You have to put out that message and constantly put out that message so that people understand their connections and, you know, what they're doing to the rest of the system and how it's costing the town and costing, you know, tax money. Certainly it's worthwhile doing. I mean, there's another side of the thing on how sewage treatment plants are designed, and they're typically designed to be double what your dry weather flow is. So they assume that your wet weather is doubled, and you try to stay under that number or you end up with other issues there. So it's something you need to focus at. There's some easy wins where we see like 20%, that's not sump pumps. That's something, that's Bench Creek leaking into the pipe or into a manhole, or that's a whole
Something weird.
storm pipe that went into the wrong manhole and it collects the whole neighborhood or something like that. It's a significant number, and I think if we did look in the neighborhood, we'd probably find what's causing it and it could be removed. Which is a huge, like 20%. That's huge. That's like a really big number. So there's some value there. You know, I don't know how, like, I'm not
Yeah, the
from
other- the
Edson.
other
I guess
prob-
I don't know how much these sump pumps are running, because you also have some pretty low conductivity soils as well. So I don't, not being from the community and not having these conversations, I guess, on what residents are seeing for sump pump use. I don't know what the correlation between rainwater and sump pumps is here, and whether there is a lot of value in chasing that, or it's not actually the problem and it's something else.
The other difficulty is it's kind of a long-term program to be taking, you know, all these connections off of the pipe, but you have an immediate problem. And so if you were to only focus on I&I, you'd probably have additional events over the years that,
Yeah.
additional problem events over the years.
So typically the recommendation is fix your capacity issues and always focus on I&I.
Mhm.
So do what you need to do with your pipes now, because you're in a capacity situation. And from now until the end of time, work on your I&I issues and whatever they are. And as you bring these capital costs down, which will take some time, then you can start looking at CIPP lining pipes. So you line the pipes on the inside, cover all the cracks up so that they can't leak anymore, and it's a cheaper repair, takes time, takes money, but these high priorities capacity issues you have to deal with, and the quickest, fastest way to do that is upsize your pipe.
All right, thank you. And I guess that's kind of where I was getting at, is it worth our time and our effort to develop a program that's not really going to solve our issue? Or should we focus on some of these other areas? And what I'm hearing is focus on some of these other areas, try to figure out, what's going on in the southwest of town there, because that doesn't make much sense.
You gotta focus on both, but
Yeah.
one you spend now, the other one you continue to focus on. Because you are paying for every raindrop that falls into your sanitary system, you're treating at your sewage treatment plant, and it's costing you. So you always want to bring that number down, and you always want to consider that as policies and bylaws and whatnot, but it's a long game. II is always a long game.
Council, any further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, thank you for your work and your presentation, and this will not be the end of this discussion, I can assure you of that. So thank you for that, and with that, I will call the question. Please vote now. Thank you very much. And that motion is carried unanimously, and I am going to call a 3-minute recess. All right, we will resume the meeting. Can I get a motion, please, that council approve a 3-year extension of the waste collection service agreement with GFL, including the service level additions for spring cleanup and Christmas tree pickup? Councillor Bevan will make that motion.
I'll make it so.
Thank you. And Councillor Chenard?
I will declare conflict or.
All right, thank you. You can exit the room. And we will hand things over to Mr. Kitlitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. So, as the motion presents, we're looking for council support a 3-year extension to our existing contract and agreement with GFL for curbside waste and organics. The initial contract was executed in 2018 for 3 years with an option for, sorry, not 2018. That's not right. 2023. Anyway, yeah, 18 is right. Is that right? Yeah, that is right. It is right, 18. With a 3-year extension to 2026. The proposed changes that GFL has asked for this particular agreement is as a yearly rate increase. The existing agreement is a 2.5 per year rate increase. They've asked that be adjusted to a CPI increase for that calendar year. So just to speak this a little bit, because in negotiating this with GFL, I submitted back. This is a bit more. I mean, it's a reasonable request, but it becomes a bit more of a challenge for a budget for us because we may not know that figure at the time when we're creating our budgets, and especially if it changes on the 1st of September, we've got an increase for the 4th quarter of the year that we may not fully contemplate. So I'd suggested wording that sort of makes it effective. We can take the CPI on September 1st, but we don't make it effective till January 1st of the following year. They didn't seem to like that. They didn't accept that change. So it's still something that we can probably go back to them with, but I think the request for CPI is a fair one. It's just how we work that into budget and developing the rates for the ratepayers is a bit of a challenge that I haven't quite figured out how we're going to sort out yet from a budgeting perspective. There's a fuel recovery charge that's in the agreement. That remains the same. They haven't asked for an increase to that fuel recovery charge. It's essentially if the gas rates for diesel go up a certain amount, they get a certain recovery rate quarterly. Based on my review of the past reports, it typically is around $1,500 every quarter for that charge. And then the cart count was upgraded in 2018. It was 2,250. Now we've just updated to 2,300, which closely reflects the amount of carts that are in service. The other thing that GFL proposed was new optional. Now they're optional. The way the agreement's worded is we can take advantage of these services if we wish, or we can decline and do them with other options. But they're for their yearly large item or spring cleanup, and it's a $3.50 charge flat rate per household. And then they also offered the holiday season Christmas tree pickup at a $2 per household rate. So those are the sort of the particulars of the agreement that I play. So in terms of the level of service when we talk about, so the existing level of service the town provides for spring cleanup is illustrated here. It lists the items that we accept and don't accept. GFL also has a standard for this, which is fairly similar. I think they're willing to expand, to match our list. I think the important thing is the stuff that they don't accept is pretty key, and I think it's pretty similar to the level of service we provide today a lot of the electronics and hazardous waste stuff or stuff that they don't want to collect. My understanding of the service they provide is they hire a crew of men and women each summer, and they go around all Alberta to provide this service to municipalities. They use their older fleet of trucks that have the end load with compaction, and they just back up to the piles and throw it on and compact it. And I think they said they can do it in most towns in about 2 days. So that's the service they're going to provide. We took a look at the financials this year. Our transportation manager tracked the cost for our spring cleanup service, which is a very labor-intensive service. Our entire roads department spends typically 5 days to do the work, and it's driving around town with loaders, staff, trucks, and tandems, and collecting the waste and taking it to our landfill. The cost for that this year, we tracked our equipment costs and our time, and it came out to $58,000. It was also seven days this year. And this was, admittedly, I'll take responsibility for this, my decision to include mobile home parks this year, which probably added the extra 2 days of work to this particular level of service. The tipping fees, we took the waste to our landfill, so obviously we didn't charge ourselves for those tipping fees, but 39.1 tons of material was dumped in our landfill. If we took that per ton fee, it would have been a cost of $2,385. Just for some comparators for the GFL level of service, I'm just using the cart counts for right now, but it does say households, so those numbers may change slightly depending on how many households are actually hitting. But at 2307, it's just over $8,000 for the large pickup or spring cleanup. The tipping fees would be an extra charge if they took the waste to a different landfill. If they took it to ours, it would be something that would be absorbed. And the Christmas tree pickup at that $2 rate is about $4,600 a year, just for cost comparators. That's all I have. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that council may have with respect to this extension of this existing contract.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kitlitz, for your presentation, and we will open the floor to questions from council. I have nobody queued up, so I'll take the first one. So right now when we're doing spring cleanup, there's already a factor within our waste management budget to account for those costs, correct? Or is that something that we are just absorbing through our operational budget?
I don't know. Absorbing, yeah, that's what I thought. We haven't planned to account for this, just absorbing through our man time and equipment time. Yeah.
Okay. So, obviously, huge amount of manpower, huge amount of staff, at a key time of the year when we probably want to be doing road maintenance and other things. So I think, from both, operational perspective and a cost management perspective, it would make a lot of sense moving this way. And I know that our staff don't particularly enjoy this week of work because it's not very much fun. So I'm certainly supportive. We'll move on to Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor and Mr. Kitlitz, thank you for the presentation. I agree with Mayor Zahara. I think this is a great bang for our buck, as it were. We have enough work for our employees to keep them gainfully employed during that time. And if GFL can do it in that amount of time, and I've always seen excellent service from GFL since they were contracted in town in 2018. So, yeah, and I foresee that to continue. Just a quick thing, and just reading the report and hearing your presentation. You said you signed a 3-year contract in 2018, correct?
Yeah, I might have got the dates wrong. So what 2018, 2021? No, that's wrong. Because what are we in right now? 2023. So it must have been 2020. Yeah.
That solved my next question.
Yeah.
I was wondering if we were without a
I-
contract for a couple of years.
I don't know why I had 2018 in my head, but it probably still.
Okay, no problem. So then my next question is just on the CPI. So, I just looking at my utility bill, you pay $18.61 for garbage pickup on the bill. So then every year we'd see a fluctuation to that amount, essentially, according to the CPI? Is that?
Yeah, and I think you would see it. And see, this is the part that I think we have to sort out a little bit in terms of how this reflects. Because sometimes, and just based on my limited experience here, sometimes the spring budget adjustments is where we set some of those rates. So that gap and how we stick handle all that still, I think, needs a little bit of work with our finance team and how we're gonna manage that. But like I said, I think my first first reiteration of it was that this was going to be a challenge from a budget for us to work this in. So I think there's still room to negotiate some of that with GFL on how that works, but I think the request for CPI is probably a reasonable one.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that is a reasonable request. The other challenge is obviously just the communication aspect to the residents as to what you will see is perhaps a nominal increase, but an increase nonetheless. And we really haven't seen an increase over the last, since we started this. Very, very small. So, but supportive of the changes. So that's it. Thank you.
So I just wanted to add, Mr. Mayor, that one of the other things that GFL provides is they'll do all the communications for spring cleanup and Christmas tree cleanup as well. They'll do all that stuff. They already have it boilerplate prepared, and they take care of all that for us as well. So it's just another added benefit of their service that they provide. They're pretty good at it, right? That they're in the business of doing this work, so they can obviously do it much more efficiently and effective than we can. It's despite the great work of our staff. It's just they're in the business, right?
Thank you. And I also think that GFL has presented a great level of service. We did have a contractor working for us for a little while before GFL. Mr. Briscoe can remember that, and it was a nightmare. So you get what you pay for sometimes. And we also have a company here in town, GFL, that they also give back and employ local people, which is good to see. I know they're a major conglomerate, but they do have facilities here in town. So. And I think the Christmas tree pickup is excellent as well. I know some residents have a difficulty, getting disposal of trees, and they end up all over town and parking lots and things of that nature. So I'm in support. If there is no further questions or comments, I will call the question then. Please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. Deputy Mayor Taylor, could you get Mr. Chouinard back in the room, please? We voted you off the island.
As long as I'm not outside.
All right. Can I get a motion, please, that council approve option 3 for the airport parking fees? Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
I so move.
All right, thank you. And we'll hand things over to Mr. Kitlitz.
Thank you once again, Mr. Mayor. So I don't have any presentation graphics other than what's up on the screen now for council. I'll just go through some quick notes here. So obviously, as council is aware, municipalities generally can create revenue through 3 different sources, and one of those is through service fees for services that we provide. So the Edson and Yellowhead County Airport is a unique level of service that's provided to not all municipalities that have airports. Obviously, it's pretty unique to us, and not everywhere provides these types of services to their residents. And they come with unique operational costs, and we'd like to try to offset some of those costs through the user fees that we provide. Some of these fees that we see in our airport are fuel, landing fees, leases for properties for private hangars, and then obviously the parking of aircraft and cars. In 2001, staff went through some work to get some comparative fees with airports. That's attachment 1 of the report. It's dated data, but I think what it does is it kind of shows that there's quite a large variation in how airports across Alberta charge different fees. You have some airports that charge absolutely nothing for aircraft parking, and others that are in excess of $2,000. When staff did this work and presented the fees changes during the 2022 spring budget adjustments, obviously the recommendation at that time was to proceed with options that were at the higher end of that spectrum, which resulted in where we are today with the fees that are in place. Specifically for parking is what seems to be the aircraft parking, which is a sensitive matter. To that end, as council is aware, on the 16th of May, a delegation from local aircraft owners as well as members of the Edson Flying Club came to share some of their concerns or frustrations with two things. First, the process in which the fees were changed. They felt, and it's true, they weren't really informed or consulted in terms of how these changes came about. And secondly, they felt that they were quite high and needed to be reconsidered. Admittedly, we haven't done the work on a brand new fees comparison and a lot of analysis on this. What we're trying to do is give council some options to consider, just based on this feedback received from these owners, specifically primarily deal with the aircraft parking at this point. The caveat on this is obviously every year during budget we review and not all fees, but there's a process to review fees and do some analysis and comparisons and bring back adjustments. I think what this warrants is that we do have plans to meet with the Flying Club and learn more about what their needs are and what the services they value and how we can better adjust these fees to look at that. It may result in change, it may not, but I think for right now what we wanted to do is just in response to the delegation provide council with some options with respect to the aircraft parking. And 4 options are presented in the report, option 1 being returned back to the fees that were in place in 2021 before the adjustments were made in April of 2022. Option 2, to leave them exactly the way they are. This is a specialized service, and comparisons were done at a time, and they may be good where they're at. And then option 3 or 4 are contemplate some reductions. One is a 25% reduction, and one is a 50% reduction in the 2023 fees, again specifically to aircraft parking at this time. And as per the report, administration is recommending that council consider directing option 3, which does represent a decrease to the 2023 fee structure, but also still represents an increase over what they were in 2021 to reflect the fact that airports cost money to operate. And just on that note, on average, the net operational costs for the airport are about $140,000 a year. And on average, we collect user fees for fuel, landing, aircraft parking, and leases are in around the $30,000 a year mark on average. So just to give you some orders of magnitude in terms of those operational costs. So I think that's all I have. I'm certainly happy to help with answering any questions the council may have with respect to the recommendation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kitlitz, for your presentation. Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor, I think I'll just kick off the discussion with this, and I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion to read to adopt option 4. So, and then I'll speak to that once we have
Why didn't you
that.
just make that motion to begin with?
Could have, but we want to leave it in the presentation.
So since you were the mover of the motion, I don't need to, do I need to call the question to accept the amended motion? I don't think so, because we haven't voted on it, right? So you're just doing a friendly amendment to your motion.
Sure, I can do a friendly amendment. Nope. Oh,
Ms.
nope.
Beveridge,
Oh,
do you
hang
want
on,
to speak
hang on.
procedurally for me, please?
Mr. Mayor, we do have a motion on the floor. However, there's an opportunity to make an amending motion in which Councillor Taylor can do so. So you can go ahead with the change to the motion, and you can vote on that motion.
All right, so you're moving,
To amend? Yeah.
oh, hang on.
Come on. I move to amend the motion that I made to adopt option 4. I had planned to do. I just didn't know the time to do it, but here we go. Okay, so to adopt option 4, and I'll speak to that motion once it's sort of ready.
Okay, so do you have that queued up, ready to go?
Administration likes this, right?
Oh, I like this so much. We could have just voted down your original motion and then made a secondary motion. Gotta make things complicated. Keeping us on our toes.
Isn't it already?
Okay, so, Councillor Taylor is moving that council approve option 4 for the airport parking fees. Look okay, CO Beverage? It'll work. Okay, thank you. I will call the question. Please vote now.
You don't get to speak on it.
Yeah, this is bumpy.
I feel like everyone's eyeballing me
Well, I wonder if I should vote yellow.
Okay, so your amended motion is now on the floor. Do you want to speak to it now, Councillor Taylor?
Yes, so through the mayor, thanks for walking all through that, everybody. Great work, great teamwork there. So I just think that when looking at the numbers, we are dealing with such like a small amount to us that we're collecting. I think it was the difference between option 3 and option 4 was an additional like $1,500, right? But the difference to the people that pay the fees is the difference of either doing a hobby that they love or not doing it at all. Right. And it is, you know, like I think we give them a break. And I think if someone sort of disrupted a hobby that I don't have any hobbies. I just have 2 young kids, so I'm not allowed to have hobbies. But if I did, I'd be really disappointed if someone just came along and just priced me out of it. So I think, you know, having an increase is important. It's fine. Having it to $600 is a fair increase. Obviously, I see that we've had people pay it already, about 5 individuals. So we'd have to work with those individuals to either provide a credit into next year or money back, however we wish to go through with that. But I think this is just a sort of more fair to the small amount of users that we have use it. If we had a larger amount, if we had say 50 people use it, then we could look at different rates. But I think for the small number that we have, for this long surf, the flying club that came, and they had the guts to come in here and talk to us about it, right? So when you do that and when you see how it affects them, then I think this is an appropriate way to go. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Any other further questions, comments, or concerns? I agree with what Councillor Taylor said. I think it comes down to what's our philosophy here. We're never going to get full cost recovery at the airport. The airport is such an important asset in our community, but most people don't get to use it. And we do have a core group of local people that have been involved at the airport. And like it or lump it, we have to provide maintenance out there, whether those planes are there or they're not. So I would like to see it used. I'd like to see it used more by aviation enthusiasts and maybe some people that would look at Edson as a way to do that hobby. And it really is a nominal amount of money in the grand scheme of the budget at the airport of $140,000 net, and our overall budget as well. So they came to us, they presented to us with information. And I think we kind of dropped the ball as well as we've noted that we didn't really communicate very well or consult with them. So I'm in support of this motion as well. All right. So thank you for that. And so now procedurally, Councillor Beveridge.
Counselor.
CO
No,
Beveridge.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. So procedurally, ideally, we would have had that we replace number 3 or to number 4, and then we would bring this motion back and vote on the motion as it read. So anyway, what I would suggest to get us out of this at this moment is to just read the motion, the original motion as it was, and defeat the motion, and we are clear on the books for the motion. Does that make sense? Okay. Clear. It was because I'm not doing this anymore. It's been a while.
This is what happens when you don't have a legislative officer.
And you've got one that's rusty.
Going back, what, 10 years?
Yep. Hear the votes. So if you just.
I hate amending motions, by the way.
But you can do it though, right?
Yes, you can do it. It's just we don't do it very often. So when we have to do it, it's. All right, please vote now. And that motion is defeated unanimously. All right, we're good. We can move on to our next item. Perfect. Can I get a motion, please, that council approve the budget meeting scheduled as presented? Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Sorry. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And we will move over to Mr. Hanlon, our General Manager of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to all of council, I do understand that you received the request for decision just prior to today's meeting. My apologies for the errors in that and the delay in the publishing of this item. As council will recall, March 7th meeting of council, we did adopt, that seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? We did adopt several council meeting dates for the 2024 budget, being September 9th, September 26th, October 24th, November 28th. Of course, in the intervening period of time, we had a couple of fires, we had a flood, and it just administratively, we are delayed in the preparation of our budgets. And so we continue to work on those and making very good progress on that, but wanted to come back before you and confirm some dates into the fall that will allow us to bring a draft budget forward and still look to try and present a final draft budget in December of this year for 2024. That said, the proposed dates, I'll read those just into the record, is the October 14th, 2023 from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. being the proposed initial budget workshop. November 14th, 2023 being 5 p.m. This is a Tuesday. Would be and you'll see in the motion a proposed cancellation of the November 14th Committee of the Whole meeting. So we are proposing to replace that Committee of the Whole meeting with a budget discussion. November 22nd then being a new date of Wednesday, November 22nd. And with that, we are confident we would then be able to bring a draft budget to council in December, which will allow us an opportunity to hopefully present something that captures the direction and intent of council. With that, Mr. Mayor, happy to answer any questions you may have on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Hanlon, and we will open the floor to questions, comments, concerns. Seeing none, I guess we got off easy this time, Mr. Hanlon. We'll call the question. Please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. We are moving on to information items. Can I get a motion, please, that council accept the August 15th, 2023 information items as set out in attachments 1 to 4 for information? Councillor Chenard.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Chenard. Any questions, comments, or concerns on any of the correspondence that we received? I'm just going to speak to the letter that we received from the Minister of Health regarding EMS during the emergency, and I think I'm not going to belabor the point, but I think the response that received here is a very direct example of what issues we have with our healthcare system and EMS if this is the response from the government. EMS stands for Emergency Medical Services, but they weren't here for an emergency. So what's the point? It's really disconcerting. Yes, there was private EMS available for those fighting the fire in a very large area, but there were many people that were outside of those the firefighting efforts, including peace officers, Fish and Wildlife, RCMP, that were doing security patrols, staff at the ECC under very stressful conditions that could have had a medical episode, and there was nobody there for them. We pay a lot of money for healthcare in this province, and I think it is absolutely disgusting that EMS was not here. And that's just, I think you look here, it's just how our system is set up. I don't blame any operator in particular. We have great paramedics that serve our community and try to do their best. But I think, and I really strongly feel that the response that we got from EMS was not sufficient. And when we were looking at reopening our community, it was very difficult to get any commitments from the operator to have somebody here. Yet they had people scheduled. They would have had people scheduled to do EMS for our community. But as soon as we issued emergency, they got redeployed elsewhere. So I guess we'll leave it at that. This will be a further discussion that we'll have for the government. That's my perspective. I don't know if anybody has any further comments on that. CO Beverage and myself, along with Mr. Beck and others, were involved, and it was very disconcerting to know that we didn't have EMS for that period of time with the amount of people that were responding to this emergency. We had people in our community that operating hotels for our first responders. If they had a medical emergency, we had no health care. There should have been EMS here, and I find the letter from the minister not sufficient. So we'll continue to have those conversations, and I'll leave it at that. Anybody else?
Thanks, Brother Matt.
All right, thank you. With that, I will call the question. Please vote now. Thank you, and that vote is carried unanimously. We have no sundry items, council committee reports, and I believe we are going back to, July 18th, 19th, and we will start with Councillor Bevan.
August the 9th, I had an Evergreen Foundation meeting. We approved our lodge financials for February, May, and we also improved our social housing financial statements from February to May. Just an update on the lodges that we're building. Kickenaw Lodge is moving along. There's some hiccups along the way here with the government and stuff like that they're working out here, but it is moving on. Wildwood Lodge update. Development project drawings that are coming up next week. Projects is on schedule and that. Residents out there are very happy. They've got a lot of support from Yellowhead County and everybody else like that, so it's doing good. We did cancel lodge security deposits back in 2005 or 6, I think it was. They voted to have a $500 security deposit put on at the lodge. And over the many years here, they maybe used it twice, and they found that residents moving in couldn't afford the extra $500 at times, and they're making a $50 payment per month or whatever, and that they're having their kids pay it for them and that. And as a board, we see no reason why we should still be charging it. We were the only lodge around that was doing it. So we voted all in favor of whatever we've collected over the years to give it back to the residents that are still there or back to their families. And that's the only way to go, because it's no money out of our pocket on that. We revised the staff recognition policy. They really didn't have a lot to go on over the number of years in that. And this board felt that we have some long-term employees that have never been really recognized fully, even with our CIO and stuff like that. So we did put a whole new policy in there, and it's a very good policy now on that. Jasper Senior Housing, we talked about that. There's a lot of work to be done there. It's ongoing. And Alpine Summit in Jasper, they don't have a generator backup for their seniors lodge and that. We talked about that, and we're going to get out and go and see what we can do to install one here so that they have backup power, a reliable backup power in that, So, and that was it.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bevan, and we will move on to Councillor Chenard.
Am I live? Mine's real easy. I have nothing to report.
All right, thank you, Councillor Chenard. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, on July 24th, I attended Edson Public Library Board Subcommittee meeting, just with some details that sort of came out just recently. The official move-out date of the library to move to their new locations, they're moving out is on Friday. We've hired a moving company to take care of all that. And the new temporary location now we can announce is this old Synovus location, which is located next to Century 21 on 4th Ave. There will be some service level changes happening there that will be finalized. We have a meeting tomorrow night, and we're perhaps going to finalize some of those service level changes that will happen at the temporary location. But hopefully the construction doesn't sort of go on. I know the construction company was Bird Construction. Sort of said 8 months, and that's what we're hoping for. So, and they're going to be starting construction, and they've already visited a little bit to get the lay of the land, but they'll be starting construction during the first week of September. So it's great to see that project going ahead, and hopefully more details to come soon. And that's my report.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. July 26th, I had the privilege of going on the East End tour of Yellowhead County, historical tour. I'm one of two council representatives on the Edson and District Historical Society Board. So I really enjoyed it. History was actually my best subject in high school, and I've had very excited about future opportunities to learn about more history of the area. And I'll tell you, there was a lot of things I didn't know about, and very, very grateful for this tour. And Madison Sharman did a great job for the county. All the questions were asked, and she answered all of them. And it was quite incredible. So I really enjoyed that. The only thing I didn't enjoy was the weather, which was pretty lousy, lots of rain, and we tramped through, I think, 10 different cemeteries, and I found out that my new shoes are waterproof, so that was good news. Anyway, this was a great tour, and great comments for the ones who put it together.
Awesome. Thank you, Councillor Moore. It's great to see somebody so jazzed about history. So for myself, on July 26th, we had a West Yellowhead Regional Waste meeting via Zoom. We used to travel like once a month to Hinton. We're doing more via Zoom to reduce costs. So we had some technical issues, so it was a bit frustrating, but we got through it. And then on August the 8th, CO Beveridge and I met with Minister McIver and Minister Ellis. We had and I have to give thanks to their offices. We sent the request in, and they got back to us in less than a week. And we had a meeting within 2 weeks to discuss the emergency, and in particular the floods. We went through the entire scenario, provided them with data. And so I think it was a very positive meeting. I think we'll see, I hope, some positive outcomes with the disaster recovery program for the floods, which has not yet been announced. And they certainly understood issues, and we have some joint, initiatives that we need to accomplish because it impacts both town and provincial infrastructure, and they have a big role to play in that. So we have made a request to meet with the Minister of Transportation, and I believe CO Beveridge and I will be having, and Councillor Chenard will have the chance to see him hopefully on Friday. So we'll continue those conversations, but they certainly were very in tune with our needs, and Minister McIver's still upset over the photo radar ticket he got here a couple years ago. So, yeah, and that is my report. We have no financial items. Questions from media and public regarding items from this council meeting? Joanne, come on up.
Through to Mr. Mayor. The trail system, they're adding on 6-point-something kilometers. Who's responsible for the maintenance of that?
So the Etson Cycling Association does most of the maintenance on that. We do provide them with a grant to provide that maintenance and have done so for several years.
So we get the grant, the town gets the grant, and then you forward that to them, is that?
No, so for the construction, this will be a Weyerhaeuser project.
Yeah, I understand that it's
Yeah.
paid for. I'm talking just the maintenance.
Yeah, so every year we provide the Cycling Association a grant to maintain the trails out at Wilmore.
The town does.
The town does.
And-
We have done so for a number of years.
Okay, so they don't pick up the cost for that. The town picks up the cost for the maintenance ultimately.
No, they also do.
Like
a
they
lot
do
of-
some,
They
but-
do fundraising, and it's all their manpower. So
Okay.
It's not town staff to maintain that, it's volunteers.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And then my other question is, in the policy for the snow and ice control policy, in the extraordinary weather event, it states in there that during an extraordinary weather event, the chief administrative officer may do these hire, engage, deploy, and resources available, including what is considered an extraordinary weather event? Like I know we talked about the 10 centimeters and that type of thing. What would be considered an extraordinary, just kind of a basis, I guess?
CO Beveridge?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A great example of an extraordinary event is the snow compaction that occurred this year. That was, where it's an unlikely event where it's not in our normal policy. It's not a normal snow accumulation. It was where we needed to clear the snow in order for passable traffic to occur. Also, when we have situations where there would be, an excessive amount of snow or rain, where it's a very, inclement weather that is uncommon for our area. So this just allows flexibility.
Okay, that answers my questions.
Thank you. All right, can I get any other questions from the public? Do we have anybody from the media, Steve? No? Okay. With that, I'll get a motion to move into the closed session pursuant to section 17 and 24 of the Freedom of Information and Privacy Protection Act. Councillor Chenard?
Make the motion, go in camera.
Okay, and can you please vote now? And that motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. So we have a motion that I would like to make coming out of a camera that I believe Councillor Bevan's going to make to approve out-of-scope compensation for the 3 recent emergencies. Would you like to make that motion, Councillor Bevan?
I'll make that motion.
All right, thank you. We'll just get Adrian to cue that up. All right, so Councillor Bevan moved to approve the out-of-scope compensation for the three recent emergencies. If you can put 3 in there, Adrian.
No, he'd draw a tree.
And if I made that council.
The council approve, yeah. All right. We have any questions, comments, or concerns on that motion? On behalf of council, we want to thank all of our employees for their tremendous work during the recent emergencies. That includes our out-of-scope employees and our union staff who, quite frankly, went way above and beyond to serve this community. And we want to ensure that they are taken care of appropriately. And hopefully we never have to deal with such emergency ever again, but incredibly proud of the entire team here at the town of Edson. With that, I will call the question. Please vote now. And that motion is carried unanimously. And just to ensure for full transparency, that union employees have already received their compensation for this emergency. It's council purview to deal with out of scope. So everybody has received compensation, will be receiving compensation for their work during these emergencies. So didn't want to make sure that they don't feel like they were left out of that at all. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting. Councillor Chouinard. All right, and please vote now. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. 4 minutes.